So here I am in Australia, and I'd like to take this opportunity to talk to you about the ego and to try and understand its origin and how to dismantle it. So the ego by definition means a person's self-importance and self-esteem. The ego will keep you locked in a paradigm of self-absorption, selfishness and separation, and in worst cases can lead to narcissism or the enjoyment of being a victim. But that also means that the person's sense of self-importance and sense of self-esteem can be a bit of a roller coaster. It can either be overinflated where the person feels that they're inferior, or it can move into feeling deflated and a sense of being inferior and low self-worth and low self-esteem. And that roller coaster of inflating and then deflating of the ego happens to us throughout the day, and it can create a lot of drama and a lot of tension within, and it uses up a lot of our energy in an unnecessary way. So let's explore the origins of the ego so that we can understand the true nature of it. So the ego's original energy is our instinctual nature, and our instinctual nature has been with us since the birth of humanity. It was the part of us that learnt how to survive in the natural world around us. It's the part of us that learnt how to work out whether it was safe to move forward, whether we should kill an animal or not, whether we should sleep somewhere, and what kind of food we should eat or not. And the instinctual energy of us is actually our intuitive energy, which is used all at once to make a snap decision. So we use our instinctual nature on a day-to-day basis. You may have discovered it when you're like, all of a sudden you know exactly what you need to do in a certain situation. But what's really happened is that all of your senses, seeing, sight, smell, touch, hearing, and your intuitive senses, which is able to kind of pick up, things beyond, normal awareness. And in that one moment, all that information gets gathered through us, and then we're able to make a snap decision about something. And that's part of our instinctual energy, and that's also part of our intuitive energy as well. Except what happens is that the ego has birthed from this space. It's birthed from our instinctual energy, and therefore we must learn to unravel our ego from our instinctual energy so that we can have more energy, so for our intuition to expand. So let's explore the ego. So the ego has become more complicated and more sophisticated over time because humanity has become more complicated and more sophisticated over time. Basically, we moved out of living in the natural world and in tribes, and we moved into cities, we moved into towns, we moved into a society where there was religion, where there was, craftsmanship, where money came around, where trading came around, where business came around, where language began to develop, where we had to go to school and learn different grades and progress through different levels. And so the complexity of society, of civilization, has actually made the ego more complicated, and therefore made the ego also more sophisticated in order to survive in a more interesting world. And obviously, the ego learnt through time then to compare itself to others, to judge others of what they have and what you don't have. The ego learnt to compare so that it could try and somehow make itself better and survive. Now, the unfortunate thing about the ego is that, everyone's got one, and so everyone is creating a life based on ego energy. They're learning to chase things based on the fact that they're feeling inadequate, and then they're having to make a decision to try and feel that sense of importance. And so we are beginning to live in a world which is becoming more and more created from the decisions that people are making from the ego, and therefore we're learning to make decisions in a world that's been created by ego, from our ego, and so life becomes distorted and kind of full of many different illusions. Now, to make the story more complicated in the 21st century, we've kind of now brought in this whole social media component, this whole Facebook component. Our technology has made it so that we can take a picture of ourselves every single moment of every day, and that we can see pictures of other people being flashed up around us all the time. and therefore our ego is becoming more stimulated by the environment and becoming more stimulated by the illusions that other people's egos are posting up, and therefore this roller coaster ride of I'm great, I'm not so great, I'm great, I'm not so great is becoming more complex and can in many cases create a lot of unnecessary anxiety inside of us. For some people, depression, and for other people this weird sense of motivation that they have to try and be better than everybody else. But remember, that actually just comes from the energy of having to survive in the environment. Obviously the ego pulls us out of peace, and it pulls us out of the vibration of love, because we're comparing and we're trying to strive and we're trying to achieve and we're trying to create illusion so that we can become important. And so, you know, many spiritual teachers have been saying for eons and times, dismantle the ego, let go of the ego, get rid of the ego, and you'll discover peace and love. But it turns out that you can't really dismantle the ego, because it's such a beautiful, complex and sophisticated structure trying to survive in a more and more complex environment. So the only way that we can help the ego is to reparent it. And by reparenting, it means that you are to have a higher thought every time you have an ego thought. So every time that your ego has a thought that maybe it thinks it's important or it feels like it's worth nothing, you have to allow your higher self to come through and have a higher thought and reparent the ego. Now the ego is actually really able to shift and change because it's always trying to look for new ways to survive, okay? So if you allow your higher self energy to come through and bring a wiser thought, allow your higher self energy to come through and bring a better solution to a problem, allow the higher self to come through and have a more expansive awareness of a paradigm that's going on. And remember, your higher self, which is your spirit, your soul, is so wise, is so intelligent, and has so much amazing information to gift you with, but you just have to allow that space to come through so that that higher self energy is able to birth through you. And when your higher self energy has more time, more space to exist within you, and more of your thoughts are fueled with your higher self, then your authentic self births. So you're no longer operating from the ego, you're operating from your authentic self. So when our authentic self births, then we're truly able to follow our soul energy. Then we're truly guided by life to be ourselves. Then we truly feel alive with who we are, as opposed to feeling ashamed by who we are or unworthy of who we are. As your higher self starts to rebirth through your body, it will then start to stimulate your instinctual energy in a new way, okay? So instead of your ego using your instinctual energy, eventually your higher self will take over and use your instinctual energy. And then as your higher self bursts and uses your instinctual energy, this is when your intuition will actually start to increase. Your awareness about life will start to increase. Your psychic senses will start to increase, because your higher self has birthed through the body and is using your original intuitive energy or your original instinctive energy to exist more in life. And then when that happens, you'll be able to kind of guide yourself and navigate yourself through life better. You'll be able to survive in a new way. You'll be able to go, no, not going down that path, or that looks like an opportunity. I need to do A, B, and C in order for my truth to come out into life. And that's when things get exciting. When your instinctual energy and your higher self energy exist together, your intuition starts to birth, and then you can obviously create the life or navigate through life so that you can create your authentic self in reality. So I hope you enjoy this little video, and may your ego be inspired to learn from your higher self so that your authentic self can blossom and that you can find new ways to survive in this ever-changing world around us. Because if you don't, life will certainly teach you the hard way through challenges and obstacles so that you learn to step out of separation and move back into the oneness of love.